Hey guys, Troy Dooley here, the Beachside CEO. This is breaking news. The Securities and Exchange Commission has just asked a judge to throw out or dismiss the case that they brought against Digital Licensing Inc., what you guys know as DEBTBox or ixGlobal. Why would this transpire? What exactly has happened? And why would the U.S. government tuck tail and run? I want to cover that here in the next few minutes. You know, if you guys remember right, back in about June or July, maybe August of last year, the SEC filed for an emergency temporary restraining order. Documents somewhere between 8 and 10 inches thick were given to defendants almost simultaneously across the West, for the most part, from California, Utah, Arizona, when U.S. Marshals stormed the residence, in some cases, of these individuals' homes and wrecked the lives of literally from the founders, the employees, literally hundreds of lives. When you look at the consumer base, tens of thousands, if not more, lives were disrupted because of a lie, a strategy, if you will, of lying. What the Securities and Exchange Commission attorneys did was give the judge a false truth. And if you're a parent, what do you tell your kids? Don't give me a false truth, because that is a lie. If you're omitting evidence, it's a lie. It's a cover-up. It's a conspiracy in some people's minds. And in this case, the SEC conspired to shut down a company without the proper information. And now what's happened is the big guns out of Washington are saying, well, wait a minute, this was because of a bunch of naive young attorneys, hot shots trying to make a name for themselves. I think that's poppycock. I don't think you become an attorney for the SEC unless you're really good at what you do. To belittle the men and women out of the Utah office that put this together, I would quit. Matter of fact, I would go work somewhere else, because that means your boss doesn't have your back, even though you might have screwed this up. And I do believe this was a screw up. And literally in December of last year is when the judge said, wait a minute, you guys lied to me. This information isn't correct. You made up a story just so you could get your way. And that's wrong. And this isn't done. You know, a lot of times people look and say, well, the government did this. The government's run by humans. Human beings did this. A lot of times we look at the government and we say, well, if the POTUS is this old and POTUS Biden is almost in his 80s, and we look at the Congress people and we say, well, those Congress people are in their 90s, and we act like they don't know what they're doing. Those aren't the people running the agencies. Those aren't the people that are literally interpreting the laws. The chairman of the FTC, she's 34 years old. These attorneys are in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. Sure, some of them may be in their 60s. But they're not stupid. They're not naive. They did what they did on purpose. And the judge said, I'm going to hold you accountable. On January 12th of this year, all of the defendants filed motions to sanction the SEC. And I think rightfully so. Over almost $350 million in equity of consumers that had nothing to do with running the company. It was trashed overnight. And then you look at the fact that employees didn't get their paychecks. You look at the fact that people's assets were frozen without due cause. And they have their houses now basically in a foreclosure situation. Long-term bank relationships they had, long-term residential or real estate relationships, business were trashed. One defendant actually said, I went into my bank where I've banked for years, and they wouldn't even look me in the eye. They gave me the cold shoulder. Other people have said, we had long-standing business relationships, and they've said, look, we don't want your money, we don't want your business, we want you to sell your part of it or give us back your part. That's what's wrong. Now, the interesting thing is, after all these defendants filed their motion to sanction the SEC, on January 30th, just yesterday, the SEC comes out and says, wait a minute, we shouldn't be sanctioned. It's just a bunch of naive attorneys. We're cleaning it up. We want to dismiss the case. We want to pretend this never happened. Don't Don't worry about the fact that some of your children are emotionally harmed and are afraid to answer the front door, let alone look out the window. Don't worry about the fact that my wife now has PTSD because you left my address in all the court paperwork in your public PR, and people just drive by the house like we're somebody in Hollywood they can just take pictures of. The SEC says, oh, forgive us, don't worry about it. Judge, it was just an honest mistake. Bunch of naive kids in the Utah office. I don't think so. But hidden inside of all of this, and this is something to think about, is if the judge agrees to dismissing the case without prejudice, that means the SEC can turn around and refile the case against any of these individuals that they want to, never being held accountable for their overreach, accountable for their actions, if you will. I believe that every American should be protected, that we should have rules, regulations, we should have guidelines in place. But from day one, when I did all the lives I did with Joe Martinez from ixGlobal, when I did the lives with my attorneys, Kevin Thompson and Clay Brewer, I was very clear. Yes, I see where there possibly could be a charge of unregistered security, marketing an unregistered security. I get it. I see where they're coming with that. But at the same time, I said, I don't see anywhere where there's fraud. I don't see where the Ponzi or the pyramid comes into play. These are real assets. There's only $50 million they're saying that these founders brought in. And if that's the case, and they're saying that this was some big hoax that was out there, then there would have been no money, because they had real assets with real people working those assets, a bottling company, oil wells, a cannabis farm. You don't have all that if it's a fraud. You cannot afford with $50 million to pay that many actors. And that's where I went with this. And now we have the SEC saying, please just dismiss the case. I believe the case should be dismissed. I believe that it was done wrong, but I believe the SEC should be held accountable, and they should have to make up the $300 and some odd million that should go to the people. It shouldn't go to digital assets. It shouldn't go to ixGlobal. It should go to the individuals, all of them, owners, all the way down to the miners who lost revenues, who lost their income. There should be some other kind of compensation for the people's mental anguish, for the people that didn't get their payroll check because the SEC's receiver wouldn't pay them. That's a whole different ballgame. So, breaking news, SEC wants the case to be dismissed without prejudice, and they don't want to be held responsible, and they want to be able to refile the charges. We're going to stay on this story. We're going to see where it goes. We're going to have some live interviews. Joe Martinez, Travis Flaherty, some other of the guys that have said, look, we're willing to talk now that we've come this far in the case. So stay tuned. Live life like it's an epic adventure. Always pay it forward. And if you're a home-based entrepreneur, act like it.